What's going on, guys? Your host with the most, George McKay, in the building. I am super excited. As a longtime wrestling fan, I'm kind of marking out a little bit right now. I'm in a moment because I am here with WWE legend, Santino Marella, a.k.a. Anthony Carelli. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for taking the time out today.
Well, thank you for coming down.
No problem. We're actually here. We're live in Battle Arts Academy, your school. And you teach a little bit of everything, right? Kickboxing, judo, wrestling.
I personally coach the judo and the pro wrestling, but here we have Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Right now we have freestyle and Greco-Roman wrestling taking place on the mat. And then tonight we're going to have a boxing class afterwards and an adult BJJ class. So we do a lot. I basically built my dream facility, the things I would like to see if I was a young kid walking into the gym,
Absolutely. Yeah, a lot of the stuff, like we've been here a few times for Destiny events. We're very in with George and Destiny Wrestling.
Oh, so actually then you can see how the gym transforms.
Oh, yeah. Everything transforms. It's crazy coming in here when the transformation is just taking place. So sometimes when we're here 5-10 minutes before the show and we see the whole thing. And the arena you have, how intimate the venue is, it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's amazing. You can do a lot with pipe and drape and curtains and rolling up the mats. And you come in here, and if you've never been here, while it's a gym, you would never imagine that it would look like this as a gym. It looks so different.
Yeah, it's very spacious, but it's also got everything you need in the one spot.
Yeah, and everything has a dual purpose. It took me, months to kind of design every square foot to make sure everything's completely functional and it transforms.
So I guess my first question is the one question that you always want to ask everybody, whether you're a fan or you're in the business, because 95% of the people who are in the business or have been in the business are fans. Everybody has that defining moment where they fell in love with wrestling for the first time.
Yeah, people that wrestle are the biggest fans possible because they love it so much that they actually did it and did whatever it took to become what they dreamed of. So there were. I'm probably not one of the biggest fans in the locker room. I love wrestling. I love professional wrestling, but there's a lot of guys that just loved it a lot more in terms of the history and being a walking encyclopedia. I couldn't tell you where we just had WrestleMania 35. Before I was there, in terms of participating in WrestleManias, I couldn't tell you what city 17 was in or 22 was in or whatever. So I'm not. Maybe it's just my memory type. I don't know, but I'm not a. What's the word?
You're not an aficionado.
Aficionado, yeah.
But do you have that defining moment where you yourself fell in love with wrestling and realized, this is kind of going to be something I'm going to do in my life?
Well, as a kid, I was hooked with, Hulk Hogan beating the Iron Sheik, and we watched that kind of, live on TV and everything. And, but it was something that, as far as I was concerned at that age, was unattainable. How do you become a professional wrestler? You have to be a giant. And, I wasn't a giant. So it just didn't seem like it was even a possibility. So you put a natural limiter on your dreams,
You put that glass ceiling in place to
kind
of not. So when did you start walking the path towards getting into wrestling?
Yeah, so when I was in university, one of the guys on my university wrestling team, one of my best friends to this day, his dad was in the WWF in the 80s. His dad was Don Koloff, and his dad wrestled for Calgary Stampede. And then when Vince kind of acquired Calgary, he wrestled for him a little bit in the WWF in the 80s and stuff. And I found out not only was he a wrestler, he had a school. And it was in Woodbridge at the time. And then we moved to Markham, so kind of delayed. There was a whole thing there where, they were renting a unit, and the owner of the building sold it, and the new owner didn't want a gym, so we had to kind of scramble. It took a couple of years to find the right building, but that delayed my training. So I started training at 28, and I was already there's guys that have over 10 years experience at that age, and I was just green. My first match at 20, singles match, I should say, at 29. I did a battle royal on the day that Owen Hart passed away in May of '99, I believe.
Yeah, sad day, very sad day.
So that was kind of but that was my first match, and when on the drive home, I heard that he passed, and I'm like, I kind of thought it was somewhat symbolic in the sense that, that's a former Intercontinental Champion, and in 1998, I actually declared that I would one day be the Intercontinental Champion. And, I guess the whole secret thing or laws of attraction, I thought about it, I put it out there, and it became a reality,
It became a reality very quick, for sure. So 28, you had your first match, and then did...
No, 29.
Sorry, 29, my apologies. 29, you had your first match, and then did it just springboard right to OVW from there?
No, I left. Well, I knew there wasn't much going on in Ontario at the time. Even if there was independent matches, there was no social media. There was no. The internet wasn't just kind of.
It was a tool, really, at that point. It wasn't used as what it is now, right?
Yeah, so I knew that no one would really see what I was doing, and so I'm kind of wrestling, and if a tree falls in the woods and no one's there, type thing. So I went to go put myself in front of some eyes, and I left to Japan. That was our only connection at the time. One of Don Koloff's former students, he went by a lot of names. Jason X, he was wrestling for 0-1.
Yes.
And Hustle, and he had a connection at Battle Arts because he trained there before. So I packed up and moved to Japan, and
how was the transition period at that point, going from like being North American and having all the I guess you would say we're very lucky here where a lot of things are at your fingertips.
Yeah.
Then you go over there and it's just it's a culture shock. It's got to be a culture shock.
Yeah, luckily though, I grew up doing judo, and I had been to Japan before representing Canada in international competition. So I'd been to Japan. My second father, my sensei was Japanese. So it was actually less of a culture shock, believe it or not, than going to the South in the United States. And that to me was just mind blowing. But my daughter was already 9, and I had to explain to her that I'm going on this mission and I'm gonna be back and we're gonna be wrestlers and all this stuff. So I packed up and went out there and just like literally paid my dues. I joined the gym. I didn't get any freebies. I had to work my way up in terms of, sparring everybody and beating everybody on the ground because judo was, I transferred a lot of my judo to the submission wrestling and jiu-jitsu and all that stuff. And I was doing well, and I earned a lot of respect from everybody in the gym, and I started having matches. And it's funny, I was doing this extra work. I was doing commercials and stuff to help pay the bills, and because the matches were every couple months. Then there was a few festivals and they came a little closer, but then I overstayed my tourist visa by a few days, and I was banned for like a whole year. And I had an apartment, I had a scooter, I had a life, and all of a sudden in one day it's just like gone. And so I had to come home and figure out what the hell I was going to do, and that's when OVW came in. So it was kind of like some divine intervention. Someone was guiding me because I ended up getting my success and my break and getting signed while at OVW. So something was guiding me.
And when you went to OVW and you started working with, I guess, some of these heavy bookers and stuff like that, not to get into any personal because everybody knows the history and the situations, but when the transition period happened from Cornette being stepped out and Paul Heyman coming in, and then you had the transition of that Russian character. Was it different from working with Cornette in the mind frame that Heyman has? Because they both have very different wrestling
I never
minds.
worked with Cornette ever. So when I got there, I was in the beginners class for a month. Mm-hmm. I started from the bottom. Now we're here, and then I was graduated to the intermediate class with Rip Rogers. So at that time, the intermediate class, they welcomed me, and Rip just gave me the nickname Boris.
Okay.
He just said, "Hey, Boris," and everyone was like, kind of laughed, and why Boris? Saying, he looks like Boris Zukov, and anyway, just called me Boris. So I'm at home, and someone, I didn't like the name at first. I'm like, Boris, and then someone's like, yeah, if Coach calls you Boris, that's pretty much going to be your nickname. It doesn't have to be your wrestling name, but that's your nickname in class. So then all of a sudden I had this epiphany. I'm like, if my coach was Don Koloff and I'm Boris, then let me talk to Coach, and maybe I'll be Boris Koloff. Because there hasn't been that combination. There was Boris Zukov and Ivan Koloff and Don Koloff. So I was Boris Koloff. And that's when, so the first time I'm in the class, the classmates say, because at the time it was, okay, so there was, OVW was a school, mm-hmm. and there was beginner, intermediate, and advanced classes. But the developmental WWE contracted talent would also train in the advanced class. But it wasn't it was like out of 27 guys, 24 or 25 were contracted, and there was like 3 of us that weren't.
Okay.
So I worked my way all the way up until the advanced class, where I was now training with contracted developmental talent, but I didn't have a contract yet. Paul Heyman, though, so the cornet thing happened on my first day.
Oh.
So I get there, and they say, you can come and watch TV. So the developmental talent, contracted talent, they put on a weekly TV show every Wednesday night. And that TV show was in 3 different states. But more importantly, the WWE writers and producers would get copies and see who's evolving and developing, who's getting it, you know. And Paul Heyman. So anyway, I get there, and then the cornet thing happens because we were sitting in a section that the students sit in, and you know, I guess they're encouraged to sell what's going on in the ring with reactions and stuff. But I was there with my daughter, and I just was in the audience as far as I was concerned. Well, plus it was my first day. No one told me anything. And then, of course, the thing with the Boogeyman happened where he debuted, and he was supposed to exit out the emergency door behind us. Well, I didn't know that. No one told us that. And there was no way to guess that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So when he gestured towards us, I thought he was going to scare my daughter, you know, like do me a solid and really terrify my daughter. She was freaking out. The costume was pretty scary.
Yeah, for sure.
And then
how old was she at this time?
She was 11.
Yeah, that would definitely freak me out if I was 11. For sure.
No, she was 10. She was 10.
That would still freak me out, 10 or 11 regardless.
Yeah, and so you can see on the video, like I kind of smirk, like, oh shit, this is going to be good. And then he rattles the guardrail, and I hear from behind, Cornette is saying, "Get out of the way! Run from this man!" So we all dive out of the way and everything, and that was it. I thought it was done. I thought that, you know, he exited out the door and everything was fine. And then referee Goose Mahoney kind of called me back, and I guess, you know, he was furious in the back that I had a smirk on my face, thinking I was kind of laughing at the angle in the ring as opposed to the thought of him scaring my daughter.
Yeah, the moment that you were sharing with your kid.
Yeah, and he slapped me a bunch of times, and that was fine. I didn't really faze me like that. I was just worried about getting in trouble and getting kicked out of America, and there goes your wrestling career and your dream and everything.
Right.
And, you know, it made high headlines, and it was a big deal. And some indie guy from Ontario got slapped, and that was it. He was gone, and Paul came in. So I never really worked with him. I would have liked to have worked with him and learned something from him. People say he had a nice mind for the business. He doesn't have a mind for just being...
He doesn't have that personal connection, but there's definitely something for the business there.
Yeah, he doesn't have to... Just at the very least, just being around the business that long, there has to be something there. And he was a booker and stuff. I mean, as a regular person, he's not a nice person, but I never got really to know that side. And but lucky it all happened because Paul Heyman I love Paul Heyman. He's amazing. I've never seen a guy like that to sit down in front of a wrestling class, go over the show, and just fire up the entire class and everyone that's going to be participating to come and bring out their best performance ever, to believe in what they're putting out there, to believe in the hype and how to generate a buzz in the local town and how to get yourself over and get out there and put over the program. And I mean, the class went from the Davis Arena in OVW was half full to packed, standing room only, turning people away in a few months just by some of the advice, you know. And he encouraged guys to go. We created our own flyers. We were called the Russian Shoot Fighting Academy, and we go put them up around town. And if everyone is building their own brand, and then it has this synergetic effect where everyone's kind of getting over, but the brand, like the OVW, is getting over, and you can feel the buzz in the town. It was for some small towns that don't have major sports, this is significant for them. You know, this is a big thing. And
you're gonna have, it also drives up tourism, right? Because you're gonna have people that are gonna hear this buzz and hear what's going on and say, you know what, I'll take that 45-minute, that hour drive, and I want to go I want to see what's happening.
Yeah, it had a very, very religious cult following type thing. Like the faithful would come every time. But Paul Heyman was watching one of my classes, Rip Rogers' class, which was the intermediate class. So he saw something in me. I remember the class because someone said, "Hey, Paul Heyman's up there watching our practice." And after in the parking lot, he came up to me and said, "I want to start you next week as this character." I was going to be, instead of Boris Karloff, I was going to become Boris Alexiev, which was this Russian shoot fighting thing. And I guess he heard that I came from Japan and I did the battle art style, which was like that work shoot style, you know. And Boris Karloff was kind of like a Russian Santino, you know, a little goofy, a little comedic. And he told me it was like clockwork. He goes, in 3 weeks of you coming out here and shit kicking people, they will completely forget that you were anything comical, and they're gonna just fear you and believe in you. And so we did it, man. We came out there, and the music and the whole. And so I had a tag team partner at the time, Mr. Stronko. So Mr. Stronko became my corner man, and we came out and did this whole MMA. You know, when you walk a fighter to the octagon, you kind of hype him up, give him a slap, and give him his mouthpiece and all that stuff. And we did that, and the people believed it. The funny thing is, so I grew up in Mississauga, and most of my friends in high school, like the vast majority of people in my high school, their parents were born in other countries. So whether it be Malta, Poland, Greece, Portugal, Italy, everywhere, and Croatia. So, you know, everyone, and that's really the kind of the basis of the character Santino, is just playing off all the different accents and the different butcherings of the language from my friends' parents.
Yeah.
So I'd get into the ring and I would speak a little Croatian that I learned over the years, just, you know, having friends that are Croatian, and I'd say it in the Davis Arena, and people thought I was speaking Russian, and they'd come up to me and they'd thank me for, you know, being away from my family in Russia and all that kind of stuff. So it was pretty funny. They all believed everything, and if I saw the kids in my neighborhood, you know, I'd be in character, and I would never break character and stuff for them. It was pretty funny, because the day I got signed, I guess there was like a press release that explained who I was, and the kids came to my front door, and they're like, "Congratulations, Anthony!" like we know now.
Yeah.
It was pretty funny, but yeah, and then of course, you know, it was getting a lot of attention, and you know, I think I won the television championship before, OVW television championship, before I was signed.
You did. Actually, you did. I did my research today, and there's some old YouTube clips still available. I actually watched that match where he won the title.
Oh, no way.
And it was a great match, man. It was. You could see the spark then, and then knowing that just a few weeks after that, Italy happened, Santino happened, everything kind of went down like that.
It wasn't too long after that. I can't remember when. It's less than half a year away from that anyway.
Yeah.
And then you know, I became Santino shortly after, and then life changed, you know.
So I got to ask the question. I mean, everybody knows the story because you shooted on it so many times. When they signed you, they called you up and they said, "Listen, this is what we're going to do. Do you know any Italian?" And you knew a little bit, right? You didn't know, you weren't fluent.
Well, I was signed. I got signed in August of 2006.
Mm-hmm.
And I got called up as Santino in April of 2007.
Mm-hmm.
So I came home for the summer, and I got signed, and I was coming home like to a hero's welcome. And I had to come home for visa work and paperwork and stuff. So I was home for
August.
September, October.
Yeah.
And I went back in November.
Okay.
And then I was signed, and I was getting paid, and I was, you know, wrestling, and then the holidays, December, and we went back in January and February. So the system in OVW was awesome. You know, we trained, practice, let's say Monday, Tuesday. We had our practice, and then there was TV on Wednesday. We watched tape on Thursday, and then we did live events, you know, around southern Indiana and Ohio and Kentucky and even Tennessee. So we did. We would drive up to 2 or 3 hours, do a show, and drive back every night. Set up the ring, and we did it. That was our training. You know, that was our real life experience working in front of a live audience. And I was driving to Elizabethtown, Kentucky, and I got a call from. Actually, I saw him this weekend, Mike Bucci, who was Nova on ECW.
Yes,
and he was in talent relations at the time, and he knew that my background, you know, my real name was Anthony Carelli, and I had an Italian background. And Vince was like, "Is anybody in developmental Italian?" And Mike Bucci was like, yeah, Boris is actually Italian. So they called me up and he goes, hey, Boris, Mike Bucci here. Can you speak Italian? And literally like a few weeks before, Dusty Rhodes came down and spoke to us. And there was a thing that happened at OVW where he called this guy Fearless Jack Bull, and he called him and said, "Can you ride a motorcycle?" And Jack Bull was like, "Nope." And he thought it was somebody doing a rib, like doing a Dusty impression. So Dusty's like, "Okay, well, can you learn to ride a motorcycle?" And he goes, "Nope." And then he realized it was a 203 area code, which is Stamford, Connecticut, which means that was Dusty Rhodes' work phone, and he shit his pants. And they had a laugh about it. And this guy actually never got another opportunity to go up to. He was going to go be Undertaker's like riding buddy or whatever, biker friend or whatever, because that's when
American Badass was going on at that time. Yes.
Yeah. So Dusty Rhodes came down, and they had a laugh about it, and he said if they ever call and ask you if you can do anything, you say yes, whatever the hell it is, whatever it is, and you better learn to do it. So they said, can you speak Italian? And I'm like, yes, absolutely. So he goes, okay, I'm going to call you back with some writers and, ask you to say some Italian. So he called back in a few minutes. And when I used to work downtown Toronto, this is like 2002-ish, I had my Hyundai Accent, it had a tape deck, and I bought this one tape, Tourist Italian. And I used to just play it, constantly. Just play and flip sides, play, flip sides. And I'd listen to it when I was in rush hour traffic. And I'd repeat it and play along. And it actually helped me get a pretty decent understanding. I mean, I couldn't speak fluent Italian, but it definitely expanded my vocabulary. So when they said, can you speak Italian? And they go, okay, we're listening. Like, you're on speakerphone here. We got some writers. Say something in Italian. So I just recited a couple lines from the tape, and I guess I said it with an authentic enough of an accent where I just heard them looking around, going, I don't know, sounds good. I don't know. And then they're like, okay, yeah, that's good. We're going to fly you out tomorrow, and your passport's going to show up at noon. Get to the airport by 2. You fly out at 4, and you're going to Italy. And you might debut as this Italian guy. No guarantees. Things can change, but that's what's kind of planned right now. And I'm just like, what the hell is going on? Imagine, you're playing for a AAA baseball team, and you get called up from George Steinbrenner saying, we want you to start for the Yankees on Friday night. You shit your pants, right?
Of course.
It's everything you wanted, everything you dreamt about, and it's here. But a lot of people, it's funny, there's different levels of belief, self-belief. And some people say they want to do it, but they panic when the opportunity comes because they're so afraid of failing. But I had such tunnel vision. When I look back now, I wouldn't be so confident. Maybe it was naivety because I was young, but yeah, I just, told myself that this is what you worked for. You're over prepared, and I had to believe in my training and believe in, Rip Rogers as my coach. And just believe that I was, in fact, ready for this opportunity. And we went out there and we seized the moment. And I remember I went to basically like Chapters. It's called Borders in the States. And I bought like 8 DVDs of Italian and downloaded them with this guy, Man Beast, downloaded them to my iPod. And I just sat up on the plane the whole time drinking espresso after espresso, just trying to absorb as much Italian as I could in case I needed to speak Italian. I didn't really need to speak it that much on the first trip, especially it's English content, right? I was English, so I could speak English with the accent. And there was a little bit of media, but the media guys knew that I was a Canadian guy portraying an Italian character, so they were pretty forgiving, And that was it, man. Boris died, and Santino was born, and
my next question would be, who came up with Santino Marella? Was that you, or was that the creative team?
No, the name?
Yes.
No, that's not me. That's creative. Because Marella, I knew right away it was a tribute to Gorilla Monsoon.
Yes.
And Joey Marella. So that I actually kind of added to the pressure that I had to deliver because he's beloved. Everyone loves Gorilla Monsoon. The name Sonny was from a Godfather movie. Apparently, I found out later by one of the writers. But it was Vince's idea in terms of this taking place. So it had little support based on the fact that it was coming from Vince. It wasn't going to be one and done. He was going to do whatever he could to make it work because he wants his ideas to look good.
Absolutely.
And that was it, yeah. Santino was kind of force fed to people a little bit in the beginning, and it didn't fly off the shelves like they thought it was going to. People were kind of, no one likes to be force fed anything, so I think they just kind of rejected it a little bit, and then Vince is like, okay, well, we'll turn him into a bad guy, and if that doesn't work, then whatever, we'll maybe see you later. You never know. And as soon as I did a heel promo, Vince loved it. He popped, and I became a heel. Oh, excuse me.
No problem.
Jet lag. I came back yesterday from Mania.
Yeah.
And I guess the way I delivered my heel promos, Vince just found it completely amusing. And you have to pop the right guy. And I popped Vince, and he was a fan of the comedy. So I had a job for 10 years.
So in terms of because you do hear the tidbits, you hear the stories from all the other guys, all the legends like yourself, who say that Vince was involved a little bit here and there, but then he wasn't, then he was, and I approached with different ideas and different paths that I thought my character should take. In terms of anything that once you did the heel turn and Vince popped, it sounds like he was very hands-on, at least for the early stages. Once you did the heel turn, was creative more adaptive to you when you came with an idea? Like when you said, hey, listen, maybe I should try this. Or should
No, I never
did
that.
You never did. So whatever creative came to you with, it was like, yeah, okay, let's do it. There was no reservations of anything?
Yeah, no. You know what? It was I was 5'10". I was 33 years old. I was already defying the odds. I wasn't going to cause a ruckus or a ripple in the water. I was happy and everything, and so Vince wasn't there so much in the beginning. I guess rehearsals sometimes, but I was assigned Brian Gewirtz, the writer, and he's very funny. And some of the stuff he'd write, I'd read it and be like, "This is ridiculous," but I can do it. And then when he would write in the beginning, it was like, I'm reading an essay that he wrote. And then later it was kind of point form. And then later they would just say, okay, we want you to say this, but you bring it to life any way you want. So, as my career went on, so did the trust and the freedom to say whatever I think the character would say. But, as long as the points got hit.
As long as the points got hit where they were supposed to, which would move the story forward, you were okay. So I got to ask, because, you held the Intercontinental title. You held one of the most prestigious titles, in my opinion. It's a little bit more prestigious than the World Heavyweight title, because that was the workhorse championship back in the day. So you debut and you win the title. You're rocking around with the Intercontinental title. How surreal was that moment?
Yeah, it was crazy. And it's funny, I had my daughter when I was in university, and my whole life was the 2000 Olympics, and I had to step away from it and support my family. So I promised myself one day that when I win the Intercontinental title, I'll let the Olympics go, And I'm in the ring, and I remember I'm looking down at the title, and I'm like, you promised, man. You got to let it go now. This is an equal accomplishment, in my eyes anyway. But yeah, looking in your luggage, you're coming home, and everyone's like, let me see it. And you're pulling out the Intercontinental title in your parents' house. It's pretty weird, yeah.
Like, I have replica belts at my house, and I look at them all the time, and I'm sitting there going, "Man, these are super cool." When you're holding the real deal,
the one
that's the belt that how many hands that has passed through, and how many legends have rocked that title. It's got to be a moment. And even though the reign, it was a decent first reign, and then you were stagnant without titles. But then you had a couple tag teams. You had the U.S. title. In terms of all the matches that you had, all the events that Santino Marella went through. Is there one of your, what's your all-time favorite Santino match?
Oh, man. I had a lot of fun matches. Some of them were more significant, when we were the Core versus me, Kofi, The Big Show, and Kane. That was cool as a 4-on-4. Then I was captain of Team Teddy at WrestleMania. So in terms of Mania, those are cool. I had one cage match with Jack Swagger. That was really cool. Of course, the Elimination Chamber and the Royal Rumble. Those get brought up a lot as moments where fans come up to me and they tell me, like, man, we were jumping. We believed it. We thought it was happening. We thought you were going to main event WrestleMania. And especially this weekend, I did my first WrestleCon. So I have a lot of guys come up and, like my age, 30s to 50s, and they're all just kind of give me the where they were at that moment and how they absorbed and digested the whole Santino's going to go to WrestleMania or Santino's going to be the heavyweight champion. And I imagine it would have been something like a Kofi moment, just in terms of that. Well, Kofi's probably going to keep it a little bit. If Santino won it, it would have been, I think, a one-night thing, and it could have lost it the next week. But just to have that moment.
And now seeing, like, I mean, your career is done, but this is going on. This is going strong. So once, I guess let's turn to that page. So once, like, the injury happened and you realize that, listen, this is my time here is finished. You came back. Was this the first idea or first goal that you had in mind, where I'm going to open my own gym. I'm going to start passing on my knowledge, all the knowledge that I gained? Or was this maybe, did you circle a few ideas before you landed on Battle Arts Academy?
No, I opened Battle Arts while I was still with the company. So I was still with the WWE for 3 years.
I think so, yeah.
2.5, 3 years. And I knew my neck was going to one day say that's enough. So I wanted to have something up and running that would be self-sufficient, make some money while I can go do the things I like, whether it be acting or pursuing a TV show and that kind of stuff.
Jiggle All the Way 2 is also one of my guilty pleasures, man. I do watch that quite a bit. It's great.
Yeah,
it's a great movie.
Larry the Cable Guy is awesome. My character, I mean, it's funny because when you go there, the Hollywood actors, they're so concerned that you're going to be cutting a promo like The Ultimate Warrior or Hulk Hogan, that they try and really suppress, like, just tone it down. And then when I got there, I was like so toned down that, after a few days, I'm like, they want personality. So if you watch the movie, I can tell, because it wasn't filmed in chronological order. So there's a couple scenes where I'm like really like just kind of suppressed and down and quiet. And then some of the other scenes, I've been there a few weeks and I'm myself again. And that was the word that even came back to the office. When I saw Vince after the movie, he goes, "I heard you did a really good job." Because I heard the first day or two you were a little kind of nervous, but then you really came out of your shell and they really liked you and stuff. And that was great. The thing is, I had all these things I wanted to do. I wanted to work with Fight Network, and I wanted to work with Sportsnet, and I wanted to coach. And I'm like, man, I didn't want to give any of those up. I figured to have to do one, you'd have to give up some of the other. And somehow I managed to be able to, I work with that show Behind the Lights, which is on Twitch, but it's through Impact, and Impact is owned by Anthem, owns Fight Network, and we do it in the Fight Network studio. So I'm so that kind of became a reality. And also the Sportsnet gig is awesome. I love it. It's every Tuesday. It's a half hour. It's fun. I get to go into the city and do the show and come out of the city and come back and do my coach here and stuff. Tuesdays and Wednesdays are long days, because I'm double shifting both. Really, I'm downtown during the day and I come and coach here all night. So they're very long days.
And then, of course, with being, again, a new dad, congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Absolutely gorgeous, by the way.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's quite an age gap between your oldest and your son.
Well, my daughter's going to be 24 in June, and my son's only like 5 months. So there's a big, huge gap, which is interesting because when I was wrestling, my daughter was in elementary school and high school, and it was pretty cool. That girl's father is in the WWE and stuff.
So no boys went anywhere near her because they knew you could snap them like a twig, right?
Yeah, I think I picked her up at school a few times and, rev the engine a little bit, squeeze the wheel and snarl at some kids. But now, Marco, my son, is going to be the guy whose sister's in the WWE.
That's right.
And they're going to be, it's Bianca's brother, whatever. So it'll be interesting, kind of the same but different.
When Bianca came to you, and she said to you, I'm sure she had the conversation. She came to you, she said, Dad, you know what? I really want to pursue this. I really want to go for this. What was there one really big piece of advice that you kind of gave to her right off the hop?
Yeah, well, it didn't really even happen like that. She kind of finished university, and she was kind of like, well, how am I going to do now? And I'm like, she had the same epiphany I had when I graduated university. I'm like, well, that was a waste of time. The education model is outdated, and you're going and you're taking all these electives like mass communications and history and geography and English and all this shit that you have to accumulate X amount of credits, and then now you go get a job. I'm like, why didn't I just get a job 4 years ago? Because I'm not using any of this shit.
Could have spent 60 grand or could have made 60 grand.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
what's the
I
difference,
remember.
right?
I remember a friend of mine. He became an electrician right out of high school. By the time I finished, I stretched out my university to like 6 years because I went to teachers college too. So after 6 years of school, this guy's has a house, has a cottage, he's making six figures, and I'm starting because I was an athlete. I'm starting with debts and a patch on my back that says Canada, but that was about it. It made me really doubt. I mean, you have to play the game, so you have to have something to fall back on. But like, is there even anything to fall back on? I don't know. Experience is.
They
Yeah.
say you get that. You say you get that life. Like high school is the best time of your life, but college is where you apparently gain that life experience. But sometimes I don't think that works that way. Like myself, I went to film school right out of high school. Got a half scholarship from Toronto Film School. Thought I was going to be the next Quentin Tarantino. Made a couple music videos. Got married to my love of my life. And then 9 months into our marriage, she tells me she's pregnant. One music video a month is not going to pay the bills. So much like yourself, as opposed to instead of you really reach for the stars. Me, I settled and I started, working on warehouses, docks, worked my way up, but then found my time, my passions to do other things. But I mean, you're right. I think the education model is very outdated. So, once she kind of reached that epiphany point and said, oh, well, what am I going to do now?
Yeah. So then I said, look, because she is coordinated and she's a good athlete and she was Miss Teen Ontario and she's very good public speaker. And I'm like, you have a foot in the door if you want to do this. And, it is, the juice is worth the squeeze. It's very fun and you get to travel the world and make money and build your own brand. I said, look, I was able to build a brand to the point where I can branch off and run my own shit.
I'm still marking out right now, man. I'm having a conversation with Santino Marella. This is the highlight of my last couple of weeks. Seriously,
but that brand is you're able to parlay that into all these things I wanted to do, and I'm involved with the International Judo Federation to a certain extent. I'm able to get students because of where I've been, and even some of the kids that join judo, they want to do it because they want to train with Santino and stuff. So if you use it right, it's very good, and it's important to have a life before wrestling and a life after wrestling, and not because WWE can completely consume you. And put it this way, everything I'm doing now, let's say I run this facility. I coach 2 different sports. I have 2 different TV shows, and I have time to do stuff on the weekends. We go kayaking and biking and hunting and camping, all this awesome stuff. All that stuff I'm doing would have been just wrestling, WWE.
Yeah, it would have been literally 7 days a week.
Yeah, it's 5 days a week of wrestling, and then the travel. You're home. There was a time when I was home for a day and a half a week, and I was splitting that between Toronto and Tampa. So I'd be home 3-4 days a month each house, and that was really hard because then all of a sudden you have to condense all your stuff, pay all your bills, do all your taxes, and go get a workout, go get tanning, clean your clothes, outdoor again. Here you go, and it was nonstop. But you become good at it. You become good at living out of a suitcase, and that's. It's an honor and a privilege to be there. So you shut up and you just keep doing it.
When you're a father and you've got that family and that child to look out for, was it hard sometimes and all the times you might have missed out on with your eldest daughter?
Oh yeah, it's horrible. I was losing my freaking mind, and it's the most torturous thing. And to me, a lot of the guys on the road, one of the things that makes you so close to everybody is that you all share that torture of being away from your kids. It's the hardest part. I remember I was at OVW and I'm losing my mind because I had to, I was a Canadian. I had a problem once. I was trying to get a student visa and it was like the wrong paperwork and they didn't let me in one time. And I'm like, I live there. Like I live in Louisville. I have an apartment. I have a cell phone. I wasn't working there because you're not allowed to work there, but I was living there. And so I was afraid to kind of come back and draw this attention to myself. And people, I didn't know if the border can kind of track the time there. Like if they're gonna say, "Hey man, you were just here for 5 months. What are you doing here?"
Yeah.
Because I don't know if they, I don't know where the technology was at. Is the Ontario government calculating when you leave and giving the information to them in terms of when you come and they count? I don't know this stuff. So I tried to limit my border crossing, and that was hard. So at one point I didn't come home for 5 months. And when you have an 11-year-old, it's disastrous. We talk on the phone, of course.
So there was no FaceTime back then, no Skype,
FaceTime.
None of that.
In Japan was even worse because we had to meet. Let's say I had to say, okay, Friday night, 7:00, sit in front of the computer, and then I'd have to go. Let's say it was 8:00 in the morning to an internet cafe and log on and try and talk and cry and just see your family. It was really hard. And one time at OVW, I went into Danny Davis's office and I was losing my shit. And I'm like, Danny, I need help, man. You got to tell me something that's going to make this better. I'm fucking losing my mind. And he's like, because I never forgive myself to this day for the time away from my kids. And I'm like, God damn it, Danny, that's not what I needed to hear. And my brother had a heart surgery and I couldn't come home for it. My grandmother was in the hospital. And, like one time we thought we were going to lose her because of pneumonia. And I'm like, my contract's almost here. They're telling me it's almost here. They're telling me hold tight and stress. I mean, literally, like looking in the mirror and having some serious conversations with yourself, and you just got to hold on. And now, of course, I spent every last penny and cashed in RSPs to stay there another month because it was coming, and I ran out of every last penny the day before I got hired.
Before you got the contract. Wow.
Yeah, I got the phone call and it was like, whew, it was crazy,
Yeah. So is that something you kind of like warned her about? Like you said, listen, it's fun. You get to travel the world, but the grind is the grind. Like, would you say if you're gonna really go shoot for the stars and you're gonna shoot for the WWE or even Ring of Honor or Impact, any of these big promotions, is it better to be single with no real ties other than just your immediate family? Or is it worth it to try to have a family and still try to balance both?
It depends. I mean, if you're going to wrestle for 20 years, let's say from 25 to 45, then you got to have a family in there somewhere. And sometimes if you meet someone while you're a wrestler, they'll understand because that's all they know. You've been on the road. And you got to find a strong woman, man. A woman that's going to hold down the fort. You make the money, send it home, and she takes the kids to school and that kind of shit. And then when you come home, on a Wednesday, Thursday night, you're super dad and you buy them stuff and you go to dinner and it's all fun and games because daddy's home. And it's hard on the family too. It's hard on the kids. It's hard on the wife. Like Ric Flair, and a lot of the guys, you'll hear it in every Hall of Fame speech. I did not win any Father of the Year awards, man. That wasn't. And then the worst. Okay, so you're doing it for their future. You're doing it for money, so they can afford them nice things in life and live in a nice neighborhood and go to a nice school, etc. But then you're like, what life? I'm missing the goddamn life, And we are putting money ahead of time, like doesn't make any sense. And it still doesn't, but you got to do what you got to do. And to top it off, you already feel guilty, and you're having one of the greatest freaking times you can imagine while you're away from your family and making everybody suffer and feel like you abandoned them. It's not easy, man. It's not easy. And there's guys that can't do that, and they can't hack it, and they quit because of that, just that part. Not because the body slams every night and because your knee hurts and whatever. It's because of the exhausting mental beating that you take.
Is it hard to keep your mental state up when you're on the road? When you literally just did a 2-hour show, you got to pack up, you got to drive 4 hours down the road. I mean, they make it look cool now on WWE Network with road trips.
No, the road trips are okay. I enjoy that. Actually, sometimes I want to just go for drives here. The drives are your downtime. You finish the show, you have that high from the performance, and you got your riding crew that you ride with, and you got 4 hours and listen to a podcast, talk about your match, talk about tomorrow, whatever, talk about whatever. So you become really close with everybody.
Who was your riding crew? Who did you used to
for
roll down
my
the road
first 3 years, it was Randy Orton and I. And then my middle few years was Kozlov. And then my last few years was Brodus Clay and Damian Sandow.
Oh, those conversations must have been amazing.
Yeah, they were funny. It was fun times. But and sitting in Denny's and just shooting the shit with the boys, that's like some of my fondest memories, That's why this weekend I went to the Comic-Con, WrestleCon, and it was really just to see some of the boys, and then just shoot the shit and see what everyone's up to, and then. And these days you kind of keep in touch with social media and you like each other's posts, but you get to see what they're up to and stuff. So it's that aspect is pretty cool.
For sure. So what's when Bianca, you said you had the foot in the door, she had the idea. Are you training her, or is somebody else working with her?
First, she was still in London, where she went to Western.
Okay.
So she was training with Tyson Dukes. He's a good trainer. He's a good wrestler. I like his wrestling. So he trained her for a little bit, and then it was time to come home and train with me. I was blessed to have like the best coaches you could ever have, and the blend and mix of coaches I had, like Yuki Ishikawa from Japan, Don Koloff, Al Snow, Rip Rogers, and then you get there and you're listening to Arn Anderson talk about a match every day, and Fit Finley and Mike Rotundo and Vince himself and Michael Hayes and Triple. I mean, like you're around the most brilliant minds in the business, and I listened and I absorbed everything, and I came with a really good understanding of wrestling and telling a story, and the commitment required. So you have to tell these students like. It's worth it, but let me explain to you what you have to do. You got to train twice a day, every fucking day, and you have to commit to be a full-time bodybuilder, a full-time MMA fighter, and a full-time wrestler, and that's a lot of full-times in there. So if you have to train, let's say you're training 6 days a week, twice a day, that's 12 trainings. So you have to have at least 4 bodybuildings, at least 4 MMA. And what I mean by MMA is, a jiu-jitsu class and a couple Muay Thai classes and something else, a judo or a jiu-jitsu, or maybe just a grappling and a striking. Because what that's going to do is it's going to make your professional wrestling look that much more authentic and believable, and you're going to be able to make people suspend their disbelief. That's how I moved up the ranks relatively fast, and it's all because of judo.
So do you share the mentality that, because we all know, being wrestling fans or being someone like myself who's very deep in the business, thanks to the podcast, all the research I've done, we know that Vince loves his UFC fighters. Does that reign true, that a UFC fighter really does transition to the WWE easier than everybody else?
No, not just UFC fighters, high-level athletes. Okay. So the skill set that you need to be an MMA fighter makes you an athlete. You can do anything. Because you have to be... Okay, I remember there was an Egyptian Olympic wrestler. He was a Greco-Roman world champion. And he goes, to be a wrestler, you can do any sport. The athleticism, strength, and flexibility and coordination required, you can do any sport. And it's true, when I'd be at judo training camps, and when we would play volleyball as a group, it was good volleyball or basketball or soccer, whatever. We could do any sport. We're good athletes. And UFC fighters are, I think, just it brings a little level of authenticity back that he wants. But you don't have to. I just think, it worked for me. But the genre of pro wrestling that I fell in love with was the battle art style, where it's like that work shoot MMA style. And I just believed, because at the time, people didn't know what a fight looked like, But now the audience knows what a legitimate grappling contest / fight looks like, thanks to the UFC. So we have to up our game, or we're going to give them something completely different. We can't give them a fight that we're trying to say is a real fight when it looks like shit. It's not. We're not doing anybody any good. So, and the MMA guys, at least they bring just different moves, different offense, and they can make it look, at least different, if anything else. Because what happens now in wrestling is you get a lot of guys just doing the same shit, slapping their leg, giving head kicks and super kicks and chops, and like there's the 80-20 rule, where 80% of all matches are comprised of 20% of the moves. But everyone's a fan of everybody else, and they just keep regurgitating and recycling all the same shit. So it's not very unique anymore. I give the analogy. Imagine we're all music students, okay? Mm-hmm. So the teacher's going to, all right, here you go. Here's some classic music from the Beatles. Learn to play it really well, and that's your homework, right? But when it comes time for you to get on stage and sing your own original shit, you can't sing the Beatles. The Beatles are already the Beatles. You're now a cover band, and record labels aren't looking for cover bands. They want superstars.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same with wrestling. You know, everyone's a cover band right now. Everyone's wrestling like, I don't know, somebody else. You know?
Yeah, everybody's wrestling like that guy over here because they like what this guy over here is doing, but they're not maybe taking some inspiration from this guy and trying to make it their own.
Yeah, and what happens is because fans can become wrestlers, there's a lot of guys that they just one day want to be able to do a move that so and so did because they've wanted to do it their whole lives. So they end up getting there and trying to force these moves into stories that don't fit because they just want to do it because they've always seen it and it looks cool.
Mm-hmm.
So the quality of wrestling has been diluted significantly when we started letting fans in the business, you know, as opposed because there's some, and this is the thing too. So let's say you have these new high-level athletes or even MMA guys that maybe weren't even the biggest wrestling fans. Well, they're going to be coming to the business with a fresh perspective, a fresh lens, and they don't have all those moves and that they've always dreamt of doing because they don't know them all. So I think that is another benefit of having guys cross-train and come over. Plus, it's just there's a lot of fans. You know, I mean, it's fun. There's legitimate MMA fans like Daniel Cormier and Ken Velasquez. Those two guys, they're buddies that love wrestling.
Yep. Yeah. And it's an interesting time that we're in now because you think back to like the Attitude Era, wrestling was hot. Like literally, you just go to school with your buddies, see who's got the coolest shirt at that point.
Yeah.
Wrestling now is very much similar to what was in that time period because now wrestling is cool again. You've got NXT and everything great that Triple H is doing there, and you can see what the future holds for WWE. It's very bright. But then you can't forget about Ring of Honor. You can't forget about New Japan. And you also can't forget about AEW. We know the big signings that we have, but can they show and prove? We're going to find that out in May. But it's a cool time to be a wrestling fan with all the options that there are. Plus, the indie scene is huge.
Yeah, it's a cool time to be a wrestler, too. I mean, these guys, you have indie guys making six figures, traveling around, bringing a suitcase of T-shirts everywhere they go, and they're making tons of money. These guys are making. So let's say you make $1,000. You go get paid your $500 to do it. If you're a guy who's on a TV show somewhere, let's say you're a Ring of Honor guy and you have a good following, you can bring $500. You get $500 for a payday. Maybe it's more, sometimes it's less, depending on your character. But you also, let's say you're selling shirts for $25. You sell 20 shirts, that's $500. I mean, there's a cost involved as well. But when you're making $1,000 3 times a week,
it's good money. It's fantastic money.
$3,000 a week is $150,000 a year.
Yeah. And
you have these guys that are doing this, and they're calling all the shots. They have the creative freedom to go and work wherever they want. Sometimes they work for a company as well, and but because they're on TV, their indie booking fees are jacked up, and they can go make a lot of money. So WWE sometimes can't even get these guys because to go to NXT, we take a developmental contract for $55,000. And these guys are like, I'm making $150,000. Why would I do this? You know?
Yeah,
for
exactly.
The potential to make more. I'm making more right now.
Yeah, I'm making more than what I need to make than what you're offering me. So why would I go?
Yeah, I mean, there's the potential. You have to do the numbers. Like for example, for Bobby Roode, I don't think it ever paid off. I know Bobby Roode was making very good money at Impact, and maybe now he's at least making what he was at Impact.
Yeah, but now he's just a mid-card player, right?
But mid-card guys, if you play the card, you can still make $500,000 if you do it right. Sure. But I mean, if he was, let's say he was making $250 at Impact, and I'm guessing, let's say he's making $400 now, that $150,000. I mean, it's the prestige of working for WWE is one thing, but that dip he took at NXT is that going to pay off? I don't know if he's going to stay there. He's in his 40s too. Or he's 40 or whatever he is.
Yeah, 41, I believe he is.
Yeah, so I mean, it's just interesting because there's a lot of guys that are making money elsewhere, and to come over and take that dip, you know. So let's say he went down to $50,000, and I don't know, now he's losing $200,000 a year. So for every year he's losing $200,000, he has to make more than $200,000 more than what he was making to kind of make up for it.
And when you're in the NXT side of things, you can't work elsewhere. You have to stay there, right?
Yeah, there were some contracts with the 205 guys and the UK guys where you could work somewhere else.
Yes.
But now I believe they're stopping that because guys are getting jobs elsewhere. And then, of course, yeah, AEW throwing some contracts out there, and Ring of Honor now offering exclusive contracts, and of course, Lucha Underground, Impact. There's a lot. There's a lot to work on.
Yeah, there's a plethora. Like you really have your options depending on your style, your freedom, your schedule, where you want to go.
Yeah, I mean, how well you work with others and how marketable you are, and of course, you have to be a good wrestler at the end of the day. And but it's funny because before, to be a local TV, you have to have a big money backer.
Mm-hmm.
And now with the cost effectiveness of the digital platforms we have today, you can get a couple of cell phones and a switch, and you can live stream on Facebook and all that stuff. So you don't need them. So what's happening is you're having the natural and organic reemergence of territories, which are just indie companies. But indie companies are growing to the point where they're it's like a little territory. So it's pretty cool, man. It's an interesting time, and it's happening right now. Now.
We're living through it. Do you miss it at all sometimes? I mean, maybe not the road schedule, but do you miss the bright lights, the prestige, the big pay-per-views?
Not really. Not really. It was. I was pretty happy when I kind of got. So because I was off from my injury, and it's like injury time in soccer. However long you're off for, they tack it on to your contract. And after a couple of years of trying to rehab my neck, I'm like, it's not getting good enough to kind of be able to wrestle. So we were trying to think of some non-physical roles I could do, like a GM or something like that. And then they just called and said, yeah, we're not going to exercise our right to extend the contract, and basically we're going to let it expire next month, and that's it. And I'm like, damn, I'm me again. Like, I'm Anthony again. Like, wow. I felt like I just got out of jail. And I didn't have a bad experience at all. I'm just talking about that continuing your life feeling of like when you come out, you're like, okay, let's continue.
Yeah, that like now I can kind of pick up where I left off.
Yeah, me again.
I can be a dad. I can be a brother. I can be a son. Yeah. I can be a husband. I can be all these things that I missed out on.
Yeah.
And 10 years is a long time.
Yeah, when I was 40 years old at the time, and I'm like, that's a quarter of my life I gave to that company. Yeah. And it was awesome. I traveled the world and made some amazing memories. But there's more, right? And you need an entrance strategy and an exit strategy. And I tell people a really good analogy is that it's a high-speed merry-go-round that does not stop. So you got to fucking time that get on, and you got to time that get off so you don't go flying. And
you got to have that security, like you said.
Yeah.
Because you look at those guys like back in the day, you mentioned some of your heroes, your idols, Hogan, Warrior. They weren't smart with their money back in the day, so they had to keep going. Still making appearances now. I mean, Hogan was at WrestleMania the other day. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for those guys, it's a bit different. I think they just, and I get that too, because I like to, I'll do something once every 2 months. And it's just to get out of the house. And I'll look at the card and they'll say, hey, would you like to come to whatever, Texas? And I'm like, not really. And they'll say like William Regal's on the show. And I go, I'll come and see Regal.
Yeah, I'll come and see William, yeah, for sure.
And or Chavo or somebody that I like to see, that. So I'm in a good spot where I can pick and choose
which events you want to make an appearance.
Yeah, based on the city, and I like. If someone calls me and goes, hey, we're doing a show in Banff, I'm like, yeah, I'll go to Banff, no problem. But if it's like, Pennsylvania, I'm like, no, thank you. I'm actually not taking any bookings anymore for the summer.
You're going to enjoy the time.
I have a couple already, and then I have tournaments. I got to, take kids to tournament. We have our own shows. So my summer's like full already. And I definitely, if I have a few weekends off, I don't want to give them away.
2 more questions, and we're going to wrap it up. If you could step in the ring tomorrow, is there anybody that you didn't get a chance to work with that you would love to work with, or anybody right now that's an up-and-comer? Doesn't have to even be with WWE. It could be anybody that if you have the ability to get in the ring with and work with, who would those 2 individuals be? Somebody you never had the chance to work with, and somebody you would really like to work with if you could?
If I could wrestle the way I like to wrestle, like a work-shoot style, I would like to wrestle maybe Low Key and Killer Cross. They're both pretty awesome. Yeah, those are 2 guys. I never wrestled either of them.
And those are the two guys you would like to. Is there anybody in the WWE when you were there that you never had the chance to work with that you would have liked to if you could
Well,
have?
Randy and I were good buddies, and we only did a couple battle royals together. We never really had a match, and every time we'd be in a battle royal together, we'd find each other right away and start, kind of not laughing, but we'd have a good time and try and rib each other in there.
And I guess my final question is if there's any, we got a lot of followers from the US, Canada, we've also got UK followers and stuff like that. I'm sure a lot of them are young because what we do on Straight Talk, we do it a little different. As much as we love talking about wrestling, we also love about educating. We love sharing the secret of what's happening here right now with our Ontario indie scene, but we also like educating. If there's a young, wrestling fan or wrestling student out there that really wants to break into the business, is there one piece of advice that you would like to give them?
Yeah, I mean, you hear The Rock say, "Be the hardest working guy in the room" and that kind of stuff. He's not joking, and you have to walk into a school, and you have to find a reputable school, and you have to cross train. Because what happens is you're asking to become a professional athlete without being an amateur athlete. You can't skip that shit. I didn't play college basketball. I can't just call the Celtics and say, "Hey, can you train me?" Right? They're not going to do it. So they have to know that. And they have to know the level of commitment. But there's also different expectations. If I'm a guy that says, "You know what, I'm married, I'm a teacher, I love wrestling, I want to get out of the house 2 nights a week, Tuesday, Thursday, and I want to wrestle once a month, twice a month, just because I want to be around the business, I love it." That person is completely welcome to take part. But we have that understanding. But if you're a young guy that says, "I want to do this for a living at the highest level possible," then we got to be serious about the amount of effort it's going to take. You can't have exceptional results with mediocre effort. It's never going to happen. You have to bust your ass like crazy, man. You're going to get up like muscles over here. You got to get up and you got to train every morning, weights, cardio. You got to get yourself. You got to look like a freaking superstar. And it's not like you have to figure out how to do it. It's the answer's out there. Especially even today with the diets, you get that keto diet, the intermittent fasting, the empty stomach cardio, and lift your weights 6 days a week, and your body will transform. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. And empty stomach cardio works perfectly. So there's no, if you're not doing it, it's because you're not doing it. And then, you have to learn how to pick a character and develop a character and market this character. And of course, there's a little bit of you need an opportunity to show your stuff, and those opportunities are going to come by people in your class that see you work and they're impressed by how you work, and they're going to try and put in, maybe they work some indies and they're going to put in a word for you and say, "Look, there's a guy in my school, he hasn't wrestled before, you can throw him $20, he'll be happy to do it for the experience, and I think you have something to offer." And then you go out there and blow them away, you got to fabricate these opportunities but a lot of the opportunities comes with how well you work with others. Right. So if you want to be a professional wrestler, but you've probably been kicked out of every fucking school you've been in, you have a criminal record, and you're an asshole, and you get in fights, but you still love wrestling, it's probably not for you. And if you want to be the guy who goes, "Look at Kevin Owens, he's out of shape, and so I don't have to work out." Well, maybe, but the odds are not in your favor. You definitely want to put yourself in the situation where you're going to have every advantage you can have. And Vince loves bodies, and also you're trying to be a superstar. How can you be a superstar with an average guy? Average star? The average star. That's a good name, actually. So you have to be that, and you have to be able to assess yourself, and this is the hard part, and say, what do I need work in? Like if I suck at promos, some people, they watch a promo and they're so fascinated and they're so tickled by the fact that they're watching themselves do a promo that they just think it's good. And you have to be able to really say, "Shit, that sucked. I got to do better than that." And then how do you get better? You got to get creative. You got to go maybe find an improv class, Second City class. I always hear that The Rock used to study evangelists and that kind of stuff to have that insight. Maybe you watch yourself back and you go, "Shit, my right hand punch is pretty bad. I got to work on that." And then you go find guys, videos. And now with today's like YouTube, oh my God, we had to trade bags and VHS tapes and stuff. Master your right hand, and you have to be able to assess yourself, find your weaknesses, and make them your assets and your strengths, you know. And often that's going to come with a coach. And there's etiquette that you have to have, and you have to have everything, man. It's hard, but you can make everything. You know what I mean? Like if you're out of shape, you can get in shape. If you suck at promos, you can become good at promos. If you don't work well with others, well, you can focus on that too. I mean, you can work on everything, you know. And but you have to work on everything. Your costume, the way you walk to the ring, your music has to be right. Your finishing move has to be right. There's all these different rules and criteria that you have. For example, your finishing move should be something that you can do safely on any size person. And people have to know that, you know. And the guy wants to come up with some moves that, okay, you're wrestling the Carelli today. Can you do your move? No, I could. I had to poke him. Yeah, I mean, and also what happens is you get guys that go in there and they learn the moves, like hip tosses, arm drags, and elbows up the top rope, and they think they know how to wrestle. And that's really literally nothing. It's why you're doing this move at this time and where it fits in with the story. You know, does it make sense to do it at that time? Is it safe? Is it there's so much. So it takes years of listening to your coach talk, going to seminars, realizing, shit, this guy's probably saying the same thing as my coach, and there's always going to be some interesting little spins on it, and you have to seek out awesome coaching, and go do things like seminars, because there's so much unwritten information that, like, I could tell you one thing, but you're not automatically going to make the changes and implement the knowledge into your wrestling. You got to make mistakes. You got to make mistakes, and you got to watch yourself make the mistake and go, shit, that bothered me. I didn't like that. And then you're going to make changes. But it's like you almost have to make every mistake in the book before you can start making these improvements. So that takes time. So it's not a quick thing. It's not a 6-month course that you can go wrestle and be a worker. It takes a lot of time. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. So, you know, there's kids out there that are 17 years old and they're wrestling. And if I had a crystal ball and I said, okay, you are going to have an opportunity. It's going to come at the age of 30. And you have to be ready between from now and then and every single day in between to make that opportunity come. Do you have what it takes to hold on 13 years for that opportunity? And ask yourself that too, because it's gut check time, man, often.
Wow. No, true words from a man who's lived it. Again, thank you so much for taking the time out today. I appreciate it. Again, it was a blast, and you're welcome to come back on the show anytime you want.
Oh,
if you got some free time, you can just call me up and say, George, let's do it again. Let's do it again. Absolutely.
You got it, man.
All right. Guys, thank you so much for listening. As always, tune in next week for another great episode. Peace.
Thank you all so much for tuning in. Catch us every Wednesday at 7:30 on Spreaker, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, iTunes, and Google Play Music. Also, be sure to follow us on our social media platforms, Facebook and Instagram at Straight Talk Wrestling, and Twitter at _Straight Talk.